Hello, I don't normally get an opportunity to talk about my subject, which is theology, the study of God, the study of religion, but I'm going to today, partly because I've been looking at this magnificent book by the father of a friend of mine, Father Linzey here, and he's written some liturgies for animals, particularly for animal funerals, and I thought very, very impressive. But in his introduction, he references some of the early Orthodox writers, St. John Chrysostom, St. Isaac the Syrian, and St. Basil the Great. And these early writers were very, very much aware of our cosmic union, our union with creation, and that God loves creation. I think it's a wonderful idea. And when you look in the other, so across all religions, there's an ambiguity about whether animals have souls. I think, for the record, that they do, absolutely. But I've heard people say, "Oh, animals cannot possibly have souls because they cannot contemplate themselves." But what is contemplation? Contemplation is deep, reflective thought, an awareness, and a responsivity, a receptivity. And certainly when I was communicating with my cat Hannah, she was receptive. She often knew what I was thinking or communicating long before I said it, and the same thing was true in the other direction. I was very much aware of what she wanted, and what her mood was. She had moods, which I think is rather wonderful. If you look at Hinduism and Buddhism, there's a wonderful story in the Mahabharata about a dog, Daruba, who takes his companion up to paradise. I think that's wonderful. And in the Catholic Church, which is probably the most decisive about in its thinking about animals, if you look at the information, it looks as if animals don't have souls. But then, if you look at the practice, you've got two popes. If we forget Benedict, who was rather negative, though a great cat lover. John Paul II in 1990, I think, was very positive about the idea that animals have souls and will live on. And the present Pope in 2014 was extraordinarily positive and open. He said we should be open to all God's creatures. Orthodoxy, particularly Greek Orthodoxy, Russian Orthodoxy. I remember there was a priest in the Russian Orthodox Church who used to have a celebration in church every year for animals, and there were cats and dogs, and it was tremendous. And I know there are many Anglican services like that. But what do they mean? So, animals give us an opportunity to recognize our stewardship and our dominion over nature, which is given to us in the story of the Garden of Eden, right at the beginning of the book of Genesis. But they're an opportunity. But having animals with us is an opportunity also for us to learn about compassion, about respect for creation. And also, think of those beasts who represent the evangelists. 3 of them are animals. I cannot imagine they're going to be absent from paradise. Islam looks initially a little bit less certain, but then if you look closely, not only at what the Quran says, but to some of the hadiths, one of the great lines is that animals and humans will all be judged when we are gathered up, we should be pleased to have passed from the suffering of this world, and that's not just us, but also animals. Now, Islam is uncertain about what happens to animals, but I think lines like that fill us with optimism. And also the wonderful story of the prophet and his cat. His cat was called Mu'uza. And there's this great story that Mu'uza was asleep on his sleeve when the call to prayer took place, and the prophet took a pair of scissors and cut off his sleeve so that the cat wasn't disturbed and could continue sleeping while Muhammad went to pray. I think that's a wonderful story, and it's up there with the great stories of St. Francis of Assisi, St. Seraphim of Sorosh, St. Modestus. Our care of animals helps us to learn more about ourselves. God's creatures, as Francis says, God's creatures should be honoured and respected. And if this is something we should do, it's something godly, something that God does, even for a moment, is done forever. So God forever honours and respects all creatures. God forever, for example, has created all creation to be good. God saves the animals in the ark. This isn't a one-off event. This is all the time. The animals are saved. I think that's a wonderful concept. But the most important concept is that animals lead us to see ourselves. Remember that wonderful poem by Robbie Burns, to see ourselves as others see us. This is a poem about an insect, and even the lowliest insect has purpose in bringing us to self-awareness. So if all animals may not be self-aware, and many are, they can make us self-aware. And I tend to follow the ideas put forward by my tutor in Oxford, a man called Bishop Callistos, who thought that our pets, our favoured animals, are saved through us. One cannot imagine a paradise which is not filled by those who we love, and that would include our animals. And if you think back to the idea, paradise is just another word for garden, and the idea of paradise is really a return to Eden. And Eden was full of what? Eden was full of animals that were friendly, that were our pets. So our animals will live on. I'm quite convinced of it. And I think we need to have a lot more theological thought about this subject. So anyway, please follow my channel and ring the bell. Thank you.